Hi folks, I'm Mike and I hope you're well. Welcome to another episode of Featured Artists Live. And in this series of Featured Artists Live, we are focusing on specific aspects of songs. This week, we're going to be talking about the arrangement of some of the songs from the community. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about in music. I've got to tell you, I'm very excited about this. I think arrangement plays just a massive role in terms of the final production and in what we're doing. And we've spent a lot of time on this channel talking about mixing, but I want to discover today how much the arrangement actually contributes to the final mix. I want to say a big thank you to the sponsors of the show, DistroKid. You can see the link in the description, the one that I'm pointing to here. If you are going to be releasing and distributing your music, I can definitely recommend DistroKid. I think they still cost $19.95 per year for an unlimited number of songs. As long as they're your own compositions, you have to pay a little bit more if they're covers. Very, very cheap anyway. And you'll get 7% off if you follow that link, and I'll get a tiny little kickback, which I am most grateful for. This show wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for DistroKid, so a big thank you to them, and I'll be talking about them here and there during the show. So pleased to see people in the chat, and I noted that before the show even started, you were all in there talking away about arrangement. I'm glad to see that other people are passionate about this topic as well. It's always good to see Doug Kidder in here. Thank you, Doug, for being so dedicated and being here every single week, regardless of what the time is for you. What time is it there at the moment, Doug? Let us know. Kianra, lovely to see you here, Kianra. Always helpful. Kianra is one of our admins, one of our mods. She will keep you in line if you do get out of line, folks. So none of those porn links, okay? None of that. Cut it out. Okay. We don't get that. We don't get that here. We have Nif in here. Nice to see Nif in here. We have, now I hope let me know if I'm pronouncing this correctly. I've heard people say this as roke, but I think it's rock, isn't it? We've had rock on the show before, and I'm pretty sure it's rock. Yeah. Let me know, Rock. Am I saying it right? I hope I am, finally. It's embarrassing when you get people's names wrong. Danny as well. Nice to see you in here again, Danny. Also, E-Short Sax, who's also been following me as well, I notice, over on my new Studio One channel. Thanks to all the people who've been going over there and watching my Studio One videos. We also have, finally, someone from Maryland in USA. I hope I can pronounce the name. Mukro. Nice to see you in here as well. Listen, guys, this is all about you. This is part of the reason why it's a live show. We want to hear and see your input as I play the songs today. Let me know what you're hearing about the arrangements in these pieces, and how you think it's changing the song or what's adding to the song. I've chosen 3 songs because I think they've got something notable about them with the arrangements. Before I get into actually introducing my guests as well, I just want to have a quick word about what I'm talking about when I say arrangement, because I've noticed around the internet that people use this term in slightly different ways sometimes. So I don't want to get into the different definitions of it, but what I'm talking about with arrangement is the instruments which are used in a particular piece of music, how those instruments are interacting with each other, how they're relating with each other rhythmically, harmonically, melodically, and what roles the instruments are playing in the final piece. Sometimes we hear about a new arrangement of something. Examples of this would be, let me think of an example. A Little Help from My Friends, originally by the Beatles. Joe Cocker did it and did a very different arrangement. And not only did he use different instrumentation, but the tempo was very, very different with the song and that kind of thing as well. Some other examples, perhaps you can let me know in the chat there about some different arrangements of songs. Let's talk about Sinead O'Connor, Nothing Compares to You, I think originally written and recorded by Prince as well, and very different arrangements there with instrumentation being used and really to feel it. That's mostly what I'm talking about with arrangements. Now, I know a lot of people also talk about song arrangements in terms of almost like the order of things, verse, chorus, bridge, that kind of thing as well. And I'm happy to expand the meaning out to that as well. I think that can be obviously a really important thing. And talking about arrangements, the guests I have on the show today, I've invited them on there specifically for this topic, because I think that a large part of what they do is arrangements. So a big part of their identity is actually in terms of arrangements as well as in terms of what they do as artists. Now, before I tell you who they are, and you should have seen it from the title anyway, I just want to mention one last thing. When I told my partner Susie that I had these two guests on the show, her comment about it is, "Oh, those guys are so much nicer than you." Think about that. That's my partner said that, okay? That's what my partner said. It's no surprise. She's the person who sleeps with me. We have Micah from Sons of Serendip here. We have Cordero. I'm already off the rails, guys. I promised I wouldn't be. I'm kind of off the rails already.
It's good to see you, Mike.
Good to see you guys. Folks, if you don't know who Sons of Serendip are, I have links in the description for them. They are a group who do their own material, their own compositions, and they also do a number of cover versions as well. And they definitely rearrange or do new arrangements of every cover that they do, and that's why they're here. I'm going to just introduce you properly. On this side, we have Cordero.
Hello.
Left, there he is. Cordero plays a piano in the group. But I know he also plays a large role generally in composition and arrangement. And then we have Mike. He's just a singer. He doesn't. No. Micah is a fantastic singer. He's got the voice of an angel. Wonderful, wonderful voice. I'm sure he never gets over being complimented for it. But
thank you, Mike.
No problem. I mean every word of it. Guys, we're not going to get into too much chit-chat here. You know I can do that, by the way. You know, everyone knows I can do that. But I really want to say to you that we're going to go straight on with the music. We've got 3 pieces that are from the community. Now, one of them, the last one, I'm going to devote a little bit more time to it, folks. So prepare yourself for that. Hang around. I think the last one deserves a little bit more time. And the first 2 we'll kind of whiz through them a little bit, but we just want to talk about the most notable things about them in terms of arrangement. I have to apologize to my guests because they don't have the benefit of having heard these songs before the show, and I've had the benefit of doing that and making notes. So, bear with them, folks, okay? They're hearing this music for the first time. They've got to think on their feet. Now, I want to let you guys know that last week on the show, some of the people in the chat got a little bit feisty and insinuated that I had a bit of a bias towards rock music in recent shows, okay? This is what was happening last week on the show. They were saying, Mike, are you going to ever play anything other than rock on this show? And I'm afraid I'm going to have to disappoint them with the first song. Let me just show you, guys. I'm going to show you the video of the first song without the sound, okay? I'm just going to pop this up on the screen to give you a sense of where we're going to be coming from, right, with this music. This is, I guess, the band of the person who sent it in. So, this is what we should be expecting. There's a lot of black T-shirts involved. And also, I have to say that the name of the artist, if I have pronounced it correctly, is also rock. So there's definitely going to be more rock on the show. Now, it is a bit of a tradition on the show that the guests get to read out the artist's name and the title of the song. So I'm going to go to probably the most intelligent of the 3 of us, which is going to be Cordero.
Oh, gosh.
For this one, I'm going to let him, while I prepare the song, I'm going to let Cordero introduce it. There we go.
Okay. Obertura Sanguínea para Orquesta Sinfónica by, have you figured out his name yet? Is it Roque Avellaneda? Avellaneda. Or is it Roque? I can't tell if it's
there you go.
Portuguese or Spanish.
Do you know what?
Spanish.
I reckon even if it's pronounced in another way, it should be Rock. If we go by the photos of the band, we should just call him Rock. And he probably wants to be called Rock anyway. So,
okay, Rock it is.
Rock it is. But here's the surprise for you. I think this music which Rock has put together is going to be not quite what we're expecting it to be from the video. I'll go so far as to say I don't know how this video really relates to the music. I think Rock just wanted to put some pictures of his band up there. But anyway, here we go. Let's have a listen to the arrangement here. Now, just up front, I know I keep waffling on, but because I'm not going to be able to go back and play parts, I want you to listen out, folks, for the relationship between the harp, the flute, and the strings, okay? And that's going to be towards the beginning of the song. And just see what role you think they're playing. Here we go. Well, I hope that was unexpected. It was. Look, I've seen Rock coming in here every week, and I've heard different pieces of music, and yeah, that took me by surprise. He didn't send it in, by the way. I just happened to discover it while I was sort of musing around different people in the group and looking at their music this week, and so he didn't know it was going to be played today. I think I'm going to go over to Micah first of all. Micah, what did you pick up from that?
So it sounded like storytelling through the arrangement, and um where I had to close my eyes so that I could visualize a little bit
Mm,
better of the story.
mm,
And yeah, and it started off with a more enchanting feel, which is like storybook in a way, and then you go into, like it takes you for a journey
mm,
um that seems like there's a conflict at some point, and then it kind of goes at some point, like the conflict grows, and then it settles out for a quick moment, and you think
Mm,
you're like the situation's settled, but then it comes back in with like kind of a victorious ending.
mm,
And
mm, mm.
yeah, I actually really enjoyed that. It had a cinematic feel to it.
Yeah, it did, didn't it?
um
Yeah.
and I
Mm.
could imagine animation being put on top of it too, like, and where they could actually tell a story, along with it. But yeah, it was very uh let me see, like, once I closed my eyes, because at first I was expecting some rock to come in.
Mm, mm.
Like, I
Yeah.
thought that there was gonna be some,
Mm, yeah.
you know, epic, like, rock moment, but that didn't happen. And so once I noticed that it wasn't heading in that direction, then I had to, like, take my eyes off of what I was seeing on the screen and just close them, and then so I could visualize and picture everything that was happening through the music. So I really
But
enjoyed
for
it.
but for me, here and there, I could still hear the rock in there, if that makes some sense, because it's easy for people to underestimate the skill and talent of, you know, heavy metal rock musicians. They're incredibly. I mean, some of the musicians wise are virtuosos, but the way that
Right.
they use rhythm and harmony is really interesting. And if you don't happen to like that kind of instrumentation, then maybe the genre doesn't appeal to all people. But they're often very, very clever musicians and very good at what they do. And for me, here and there, I was thinking, yeah, I could actually hear a band playing that kind of chord progression and some of the tension that was built up and everything. It was really good. Not to talk about, I'm interested to hear what Cordero's got to say here, because I think he's going
Well,
to come at it from a different perspective here.
no, actually, I was going to come from the exact same perspective that you are.
Mm,
So I play at this church that I play at. The drummer is actually a metal drummer,
mm,
and he's always like showing me like a lot of these metal arrangements because he's also in a metal band.
mm, mm,
And I must say that metal music is the most intricate, rhythmically and melodically, like music that, I mean, it's yes, out of control. And
mm,
so when I was listening to this composition, probably because of the images that it helped prime my mind to it, I was like, oh yes, this is. I see all the complex lines. Like I can hear, like for example, a lot of times like the electric guitars will kind of be in harmony with each other,
mm,
super
mm,
synced,
mm,
super locked
mm,
together, doing these
mm, mm,
crazy kind of riffs and things,
mm.
while you have some kind of crazy syncopated low chugga chugga guitar thing happening. So yeah, I think yeah, I don't actually know like the history of metal music, or like
Mm.
where this whole intricacy came from, but um I don't know. I'm always impressed by it, and I can definitely hear the influence of it in this piece here.
Mm,
So
mm, mm. It really was a
yeah.
journey, wasn't it? I guess the thing that I wanted to point out, and we don't have the benefit today of me sort of rewinding and going back, although I kind of wish I could. But yeah, the thing I picked up on as an example here, and I invite people, I haven't put the links in the description yet, I'm afraid, guys, yet today, but I will update them, and I invite people to, I think Keanu did put a link to Rock's YouTube channel there. So I invite people to go and have a closer listen to this, because I was talking before about this just at the beginning, it was started at the beginning, the flute and the strings, and really what I was going to talk about was the fact that the roles which were played by those instruments, nothing's wasted. Everything was there for a reason. Okay, and in this case, the harp started off. Now, harp naturally is a polyphonic instrument, and in this case it kind of it gives the listener. It tells the listener what's going on in a melodic sense and in a harmonic sense. So it set the chords actually at the beginning, the harp, right? And then a flute came in. Now a flute is not polyphonic, so it's going to be melodic in what it does. So that took a melodic role. So then you've already, with two instruments, you've got some rhythmic information for the listeners, you've got some harmonic information, and you've got a melody. Then the strings came in. Now the strings for me played a different kind of a role. They were more of a textural role. They didn't necessarily add that much in terms of harmony, but they filled out the texture in the middle in a really deep way. And you can you can always hear that in good arrangements, I think, is that the instruments are playing a role. And for me personally, also avoid waste, avoid duplication, avoid putting things in there which don't really serve the music in any way. But yeah, folks, go back and listen to that. I think that this was a tremendous example, and we often find, of course, in classical music of where instrumentation is really playing a massive role in affecting us emotionally, and that's what music is all about. Ultimately, that's why we're here. That's why we do it. Okay, it's not really a technical exercise, or it's not a technical goal. We want to move people, and Rock there was using that, and I think, I alluded to this in the intro, that apart from the arrangement in terms of instrumentation, there's also the order of things. He took us on a real journey there in terms of changing it up, getting not quite, I wouldn't technically say it was discordant, but verging on kind of that discordant, where you build up tension with certain types of harmonic structures and things. And then, as Kion rightly pointed out in the chat there, then the release of that. So build up tension and then release. And for me, the arrangement, apart from the composition elements of melody and what have you, the arrangement was really helping there. So that's a good start to the show. I really enjoyed that, and well done, Rock. And I know that, of course, like many of us, he's using virtual instruments there, and he's using them very well, in my opinion. He's using them really, really well. I think I'm not quite sure which libraries he mentioned there. I'll have to go back through the chat, but yeah, it's amazing what you can do from your bedroom studio these days, folks. Let that be an inspiration to you. Now, of course, I do have to mention, and I'd like to mention, in fact, that if you do follow that link up above, then you'll get a discount and be able to release your music through DistroKid. I'm going to queue up the next song while we hear about what DistroKid is all about. If you do follow the link in the description down below, it's going to take you to a special page on DistroKid with this yellow banner at the top. That banner is letting you know that you're going to get a further 7% discount off your first year if you sign up here. And let's face it, it's already very cheap. If we scroll down, we can see that a year's membership is $19.99 per year for an unlimited number of albums and songs. And so long as it's your own music, there are no extra charges, and you get to keep all of the royalties from the various platforms. Platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, TikTok, Pandora, Amazon, Instagram, Tidal, iHeartRadio, Deezer, and more. Now, when I was thinking about what music I know is out there in the community, there was kind of one name in the community which kept coming to me when I was thinking about arrangement, because I know this individual, well, he just works with arrangement all the time. I have featured him on the show before, and I think I'm going to read his name out. I'll leave the final one to Micah to read out. Well done, by the way, Cordero. I set you a challenge with the title, didn't I, last time? You read it very well. It's really good. So I'm just going to say this one is from a very significant member of the community. I'm not sure if he's here in the chat today. Let's have a look. Is he? Is he here? No, but there he is. Yeah, he's here. He's here, so he can explain himself. His name, or he goes by the name of Mimo Japan. Now, this piece that I found on his YouTube channel is, I don't think it's really a title for the piece of music. It's called Guitar Swell, but I think he was just trying out a plugin of some kind at the time, and I think it may have been called Guitar Swell. We'll see in a moment. It's in the video. But I really liked this piece of music. I was just going through some of his pieces of music. He does all kinds of covers of different things normally. For Cordero and Micah's sake, I'll just let you know that Mimo, as we call him, is a gentleman who's a German guy who lives in Japan. He has lived there for quite some time, I think, and he works out of a very small, tiny little space. And he does these wonderful reenactments of well-known songs a lot of the time using completely virtual instruments, and he just does it really, really well. If I wanted to know how to put something together with virtual instruments, then I'd probably take Mimo's advice. But on this case, as I say, he was probably, I think, trying out a particular piece or a particular virtual instrument, this Guitar Swell one. And I liked what he did in terms of the arrangement. Let's have a listen and see what you guys think. So Mimo was saying that his wife and kids mock him for the last part there. I say, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right, Mimo. So it looked like
Yeah,
you were
that was
having fun
great.
to me. So let's go to Cordero first. I mean, this is, look, folks, I want to tell you, these guys not only, sometimes use virtual instruments, they make virtual instruments. So this is really interesting to get your perspective. Cordero, what are you thinking about this in terms of arrangement, I guess, primarily?
Yeah. So I guess the overall. So one thing it creates. Okay. So it creates this really wonderful vibe. But what's it seems like there's not okay. There wasn't a discernible melody. Like I can't walk away from it like humming it, but but I do walk away continuing the feeling of what it leaves me with. This track could continue playing in the back of my head, even though I don't have all the melody parts. But I don't think all music has to have a discernible melody.
Yeah,
Like
true.
if I took a psychology of music class in undergrad, and they said that music, like one definition of music is that it's cognition without propositional content. So it doesn't necessarily have to have a thing that it's saying, but it is still something that you're cognitively appreciating. I
Right.
could go into detail, but I don't want to because
Oh,
we're focusing on the
no,
arrangement.
please, come on, a bit more detail. Come on. You're on a roll, man.
Well, yeah. So like it's like when you're listening, like if you were to like look at a MRI or something of the brain, like it's processed as thinking. But the thing is, you don't have you're not saying words like it's so it kind of it's in a sense it bypasses all of the ways that words get in the way and it goes directly to just pure
Right.
cognition, pure like emotion. And so with this track, it's still in the back of my head right now. I'm still feeling it. I just couldn't hum the melody or anything. So yeah, so and it had all the elements that you would need. So for example, you had like the guitar as an instrument has its transient, so it can kind of operate as a rhythm, but also at the same time it has its tone. So those elements, so the rhythm and the melodic content, or not the harmonic content, is there. So I'm just look at the notes I made. Yeah, and then after a while, as your mind starts to kind of be like, okay, I got it. He comes back in with this electric guitar, which pulls you back in for a moment, and you're like,
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
we're still there, and you have this new layer of feeling
The
to it. So
contrast and the surprise, And the surprise doesn't always have to be bah, like that, but just enough, just at that point where a listener might be going, "Okay, I've got this. I know what this is all about." Then give them something where they go, "Oh, hang on, I didn't know that was coming." Yeah, is that what you're talking about with that? Yeah,
yeah.
so important. Yeah. Cool. I like the cycle. My notes now seem really mundane to Cordero's psychological insight there. So I'm going to go over to Micah.
Oh no! I was like, "Dang, Cordero!"
Whoa!
Like, whoa! Yeah, you took it there.
Yeah. We should have him on with Dr. Phil next time. Never mind,
Right.
Go on.
I really enjoyed that. Yeah, like what was great about it too was that it was bass and then guitars and then some percussion that came in at the end. But like there wasn't they didn't need extra elements to it to keep it interesting.
And wasn't that bass nice as well?
Yeah,
the bass,
the bass was really nice.
I was really enjoying the bass. Yeah.
Yeah, and it gave me all the warm fuzzies, as I was listening to it. And yeah, I'm trying to think of what I would say. I just really enjoyed that track, and there is a kind of a well, I don't know, like because Cordero was talking about the melody, that there wasn't a discernible melody. There were certain points though that stuck with me. So even though like it like there wasn't a melody that I would sing, throughout the entire thing, there was still there were like certain lines. I was like, oh yeah, that particular line is sticking with me and playing in my head as well.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. There's little bits in there. Yep.
Yeah. There was what other thing? Oh, and just the fact that he created that all with virtual instruments
Yeah, I know.
was
Yeah.
really impressive.
You know, he does it pretty quickly as well. I think he was saying in the chat there he's just goofing around. Oh,
Wow,
I
yeah.
hate people like that. I can't see, you know. Yeah, I sweat over these things, you know. I sweat over them sometimes for 5 minutes. Anyway, but look, a couple of little notes there, and again, my notes are really a bit mundane, but and they're the same as the last song, really. But talking about roles, I noticed right at the beginning there was some key elements in there. There was a virtual nylon string guitar, and as Cordero said, what that had was the transient. Okay, so it had that quick attack on it, but he was mixing it with that virtual instrument he was using, which was that swell guitar. By the way, I wasn't aware of that one. I looked it up yesterday. I thought that's really cool. I might get hold of that. It's so nice. But that was almost opposite. It had a very slow attack and a long decay. So he was using those in combination. And again, both instruments had their role. There wasn't a duplication there. For example, a duplication might be if he decided, oh, you know, I'll have a piano in a similar range to that nylon string guitar there. It probably wouldn't have worked because it's two things kind of doing roughly the same thing if your piano was playing arpeggios and things. So you kind of go, oh, there's redundancy there. One of the instruments probably is not there for a good reason then. And it's something to be aware of, because a lot of the time, you know, I think when we're creating, it's tempting to keep adding more and more things in there as if more is going to be more. And in fact, often more can be less. It actually creates problems as well with mixing later on when you've got those two elements, especially if they're taking up the same frequency range. And something I've talked about a lot on the channel is something called masking, where really in the end, the listener doesn't really hear either of those instruments clearly, and it's just a bit of a mush. So I'm big on have a role for things, have them there for a reason, you know. Guys, just talking about your lineup, because I want to talk about your lineup, and I'm going to stir the pot here a little bit, right? You've got for folks who are not aware of Sons of Serendip, you've got a very specific lineup: piano, cello, harp, and vocals. Okay, and I think you occasionally bring some other things in there. What happens when you think this song really doesn't need the harp? Does that happen? Is there times when you're trying to... Oh, I'm going to cause trouble here now, aren't I? But he's probably not watching. Are there times where you're trying to shoehorn it in when it's not required, or the piano even, or the vocal? Maybe sometimes you want to do an instrumental. Does that happen? Or do you just make it work?
I think we're always thinking about each instrument. So it's like, so Cordero will lay down the structure of the song, and oftentimes, I mean, our arranging process will actually begin with improv, and so through that, it's like everybody's finding their place, and they're thinking about the different elements that they can bring to the arrangement, and thinking about what the arrangement actually needs. And so I think it's in term like when we approach arranging in that way, then everybody just finds their place and sticks to it, and then we hash out like the different parts and lock those down. When Cordero arranges the entire track like on his own, Cordero, you can say more about that, about like what you're keeping in mind.
I mean, it's the same thing. If because I know we're arranging for this quartet, we have to, incorporate every instrument in some form or fashion. And so sometimes, the piano and the harp can have very similar sounds. And so sometimes that part of that process is just make. So, for example, I'll just play some of the lower notes while let the harp, which has a more transient kind of plucky sound, let it shine in that regard.
Yeah.
Whereas for rhythm things, like the piano would do better than the harp, since the harp is when you strike a note, when you try to strike it again, you have to dampen it in order to strike it again, so you can't get like a sort of like the I don't know. So yes, we have to think about how to make it work, but we don't we don't often have songs where we just like let this one person sit the whole track out. We make it work somehow.
So maybe it's
Like
the fact
even
that,
an instrumental,
mm,
like I'll jump in on the
with the
recording.
tambourine,
Yeah,
with
no,
oh no, it's the cajon, isn't it? You
the
sometimes play
cajon,
cajon,
right?
yeah,
Sometimes
yeah,
cajon,
yeah,
and sometimes vocals too. Just
yeah,
like
yeah.
Textures.
I'll listen to what
You
Kendall's
take on
doing
the
or the
Yoko
cellist
Ono
is
role
doing.
for a while, yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay. We'll let him think he's still contributing.
Yeah,
Cordero. Micah? Do you have a like a a CV or a profile somewhere where you say singer, stroke percussionist? Does it say that or you?
No, I don't mention percussionists. Yeah. But yes, I
Yeah.
do play percussion pretty
You
much
did, yeah.
every
Yeah.
show.
Actually, I shouldn't mock you because I know you're actually a very talented pianist as well. I've seen some videos of you playing piano and you know what you're doing there. So we'll leave
But
that out.
yeah, and I'll do like maybe one song, like during a certain show or something where I'll play piano. But yeah, I don't mention a lot of things that we'll do during the shows because if somebody were to be like, "Hey, I need you to play on this track or whatever," it's like, I'll leave that to Cordero But singing,
Well,
yeah, all day. I
all day
enjoy
long. Now,
singing.
I think we touched upon this last time a little bit though when you guys were on the show, but it is interesting because there's a temptation for us home studio folks to think, hey, we can do so much more than Sons of Serendip because we've got all gazillion, I've just got a complete 14, for example. I've got so many instruments available to me on my computer. But we discussed this before that sometimes actually having restrictions actually brings out the best in you as a musician and a composer as well, And I think what's really good about your lineup is the fact that mostly, although Cordero's mentioned a crossover there between harp and piano, mostly the roles that you've got are pretty distinct, so they're going to be able to offer something different to every single piece of music that you do. We'll talk about that again, but first of all, another quick word from the sponsor, DistroKid, who make it really easy for you to release your music. I'm going to show you how. If you want to release your music via DistroKid, there's just a couple of things you need. First of all, the music itself. Here's mine in my DAW Cakewalk, and I'm exporting it to an uncompressed WAV file for best results. Now, the other thing you'll need is some artwork. I just grabbed an old photo, which I'd taken on the beach, chucked on some text here, and that's what I call art. Then I went over to DistroKid, and I just have to fill in this extra easy form. It's a no-brainer form. You get helped all the way through with little hints and things. You can't really do anything wrong. You just go ahead and confirm a few things about your music, and then you just have to actually upload the artwork and the song itself, and DistroKid takes care of the rest. It's going to send it out to all of the best platforms so that people can hear and buy your music. I make it look so easy because it is that easy. Now, one of the when if you were to Google and go on Wikipedia for the word arrangement, they'll often talk about it in a classical sense. So, an arrangement by so and so. The idea being there that there were an existing piece of music, and then this was an arrangement of that piece of music with different instrumentation, but still maintaining the melodic, harmonic, etc. structure of the original piece of music with different instrumentation. And that still happens, of course, in contemporary music. And sometimes we will take songs and we'll do our cover versions of them. I actually encourage people to record cover versions just for learning about recording at home. It's and in actual fact, to do probably the least artistic thing, sometimes it's a good idea to try and mimic something. I wouldn't suggest releasing that, but the process of actually trying to reproduce something that you really love will help you to learn about how to create those sounds, and it will give you'll analyze in a very different way. How did my favorite artist do that? It's a really fun thing to do. As I say, I probably wouldn't recommend releasing it. That's a bit of a pointless exercise to give the world exactly the same version of an original song. But hey, if that's what you want to do, I'm not criticizing it either. Notice how I sat on the fence there. Anyway, But the best form for me of then doing cover versions is to then give a new interpretation of the song, and often that's going to come through arrangement and people's different abilities, and especially when vocals are involved, different voices and you know, that kind of thing that would naturally come about. So the final artist that we're going to look at, and we'll pick this one apart a little bit more than we have the other ones. I'll let Micah read out their name. I'll just pull it up here. There you go, Micah. It's down to you this time.
Oh,
Oh no!
it's
Oh,
High Hopes. My Sons
Yes.
of Serendip.
Yeah.
that's
I'm glad you could pronounce it properly at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, on this occasion.
We've been called
because-
all kinds of names, so yeah.
So I thought this would be fun because we can get a very different insight now, because this time we're going to be hearing from the artists themselves. And you covered, you know, like a super, super famous song here by Panic at the Disco, wasn't it,
Yep.
originally? Got played on the radio a lot here in this house and is a bit of a favourite. So it's really very, very different. So what we're going to do this time is a little bit different. I'm not going to say much after this song. I'm going to invite the audience to have a close listen to it and you know, give me their honest opinion about the arrangement. But we get to actually speak with the arrangers themselves afterwards, Sons of Serendip. Let's have a listen to your song, guys.
Mama said, fulfill the prophecy, be something greater. Go make a legacy, manifest destiny. Back in the days we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, burn your biographies, rewrite your history, light up your wildest dreams, museum victories. Every day we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, don't give up, it's a little complicated, all tied up, no more love, and I'd hate to see you waiting. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living. Didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes. Mama said, it's uphill for oddities, stranger crusaders. Ain't never wannabes, weirder than novelties. Don't ever change, we wanted everything, wanted everything. Stay up on that rise, stay up on that rise, and never come down. Oh, stay up on that rise, stay up on that rise, and never come down. Mama said, don't give up, it's a little complicated, all tied up, no more love, and I'd hate to see you waiting. They say it's all been done, but they haven't seen the best of me. Yeah, I've got one more run, and it's gonna be a sight to say. Yeah, had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living. Didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living. Didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes.
Well, there we go. There's a question came up right at the last minute there. You guys might want to start off by answering it. Do you guys perform this arrangement live? And if so, do you do the percussion on the sequencer? So I was going to ask you about that actually, guys, because obviously you've got some percussion in there. It's not at all the same as the original song by Panic at the Disco. So it's obviously something you felt needed to be in there. So can we address both of those? I'll go to Micah first. Do you add them in live? And then we'll go to Cordero to talk about why you add them in at all.
So we do perform this live, and I'll add percussion on the cajon, and Cordero will mix it up so it sounds a little bit more beefy, and and so that's like
That happens
it
like that.
it sounds different. It's a different sound, but it still has a full sound to it. It's just not as full, obviously, as a studio recording.
And I think Rock has rightly spotted, the same as I did in there. Apart from, the cello, there were some other strings in that recording as well. So how about that? Do you guys try and reproduce that, or does your normal lineup sort of pretty much cover it for the live thing?
Cordero, you got that.
Cordero, you got that, yeah.
Yeah. So this is an aspect of arranging that we haven't discussed yet. When you're working on something, you have to create things that are actually playable by the musicians. Like if you're going to perform it live, you have to come up with parts that are actually playable. So you kind of have to know a little bit about each instrument, what they're actually capable of. So no, we don't use. We've tried click tracks in the past, just like a metronome, but we don't. That never really. It worked for a while, but for reasons that are too long to go into, we don't use like a metronome anymore. But we do layer in a bunch of. So the keyboard has, like, I use an Arturia Keylab, and so I fade in. I have like an orchestra patch, like Symphobia. Some other string parts. I have like an actual sub bass that I play with the left hand. Have the pianos. I have little sparkly bells. So these are all being layered in live, and so
and you're using also a breath controller.
I look goofy.
Does he use a breath controller as well?
Yeah.
Wow.
I have a breath controller that I use too for like flutes and other things. So as Micah said, we are able to fill it out, but it's just that the production won't be exactly the same as what you hear here.
But oftentimes when we do this song, we're doing it for performances for youth, and we just get them singing too, and so they don't really. They're not listening.
They're not
for
comparing
that.
it to what they've heard on your YouTube channel and going, "Oh, the strings are not quite the same." Yeah, exactly.
They're just excited to sing.
I mean, I think it's one of the beauty of. I personally think that when we go to a live performance, in any case, we don't want to hear a reproduction of the record. It's nice to hear musicians doing their thing, and as you say, circumstance is going to control that a little bit as well. What's actually possible then? Do you want to play with a click track and bring that element into it, which obviously you guys tried and found it wasn't quite for you. Let's go to if you can remember, in terms of how you started off with this song. So obviously it's a pretty famous song at the time. And I actually did a little comparison yesterday where I kind of went between your version and Panic at the Disco, and I was like, wow. I mean, it's obviously different, but I was like, no, there's a whole bunch of stuff you didn't even try and replicate from the original. There was some melodic elements and what was going on there, and some parts which are new in there as well. So just talk to me about, I think I'll go to, Micah first. Sorry, Micah, and then Cordero. But what's the thought process there? How does that come about? Do you just jam that, as you were talking about earlier, and see what happens, or?
No, so this one actually was arranged by Cordero. And so what we did was he and I spoke, and we were like, all right, what's we were going through a number of different songs. We heard this one, and we were like, this one would be a good one to cover. And then I had to figure out which key, because I actually can't do it in the original key. And so I sang through it a number of times and tried to think about, like, all right, what would I want to do to make this my own? And so there are certain parts in there that are different than the original. And so it was, but finding the right key to be able to add my own creative elements to it, that was the first step. And then from there, Cordero started to build it out, sent it over, and it was like feedback back and forth. But he created a beautiful arrangement and then sent it out to everyone for us to record. And he also did the production on it as well. And so
He's a
Cordero,
clever fella.
yeah.
What was this? This is my memory's terrible. This was this during the pandemic that we
Yeah.
were okay. Yeah, so right. Okay. Yeah, because it was for the album. Yeah. Okay. So yes. So it is different. So for one, it's slower, and there was the question of rhythm because the original song is more of a dance kind of track. And what's interesting, what kind of drew us to it is that it had a ton of orchestral elements in it. So we thought it seemed like, oh yeah, we can definitely do this. But the question of rhythm is the tricky part for our band because I mean we have the cajon, but like there's all the sort of 16th subdivisions and like I mean, and then Micah has to sing this on top of that. So we had to. So one, we slowed it down and we thought maybe a more cinematic kind of approach or like a trailer-ish, I don't know. And we knew that we could kind of pull back some of those rhythmic elements with like the cello. So the cello's doing a rhythm that's kind of like don da don da don da don da don da don. So we can get those kind of subdivisions in there. But what was the other part of the question? The
It doesn't matter. You just talk and say whatever you like about.
just the arranging process, Cordero.
Yeah,
like
so
what kind of things that you have in mind?
Yeah, so first created it using just sample instruments, so that each person, the guys would get an idea of what it was.
Right.
And
Okay.
then went through the process of writing out the parts.
That's interesting.
And then passing because we're all in different locations during the pandemic, so we couldn't come together to record. So we bought the equipment that we needed. And each person got like a preamp and a microphone, and they recorded their parts individually. And it's funny listening back to it now. There's things I would change, like in terms of how things were recorded, or but like again, like this is the first time doing a whole album outside of an actual studio, and
Right,
so
yeah.
we were learning. But
It was interesting because obviously the original has got more kind of like traditional drums that you would have in a band, but although you obviously then used virtual instruments to bring in those percussive elements, you didn't use them in that way at all. This was more like the way an orchestra would use sort of timpanis and things like this kind of percussion. Was that just a conscious effort, or it just felt good at the time when you tried?
It seemed like it would have fit better with what we're doing, like a harp and a cello, and I don't think I even attempted to try with like real drums, or even software like drum kits.
Interesting. Okay. And how about the sort of there was some melodic elements in there which, unless I'm wrong, were not in the original. So is that just what are you thinking with that? Are you making a conscious decision like, I don't want this to be too close to the original, therefore I'm going to write something different? Or again, do you listen to the original a lot, or do you just go, I don't want to listen to it too much, I want to let my own inspiration flow? How's that work for you?
In general, it can go both ways. I think I did listen to it a few times, just so one, to get like the actual ordering of parts. But there is also a question of like, so we can improv a piece pretty quickly, but the problem is that sometimes it can start to sound the same, and I end up just playing these large block chords in the left hand because I also have tons of layers, so I can't do too much detail stuff. So for the recording, I thought, well, let me just play it like I would like a piano. So so again, the way I perform it live is different than how it is on there, where I have like a motif kind of going the whole time. Yeah, I think I listened to it not too many times, but it was enough to make me feel like, did we do okay? Did we just enough to kind of question myself, because the original is like a pretty epic track, and ours is sort of laid, and ours is so kind of a little bit more laid back. So it almost, when we finished it, I didn't know if I just had to accept, okay, this is just a different interpretation of it rather than try to compare it to the original. But
I personally find that when I've done this is there gets to a point to me where I go, I really don't want to listen to the original, especially when I get stuck to the recording stage. It's because especially if you love the original, if you love the original song, it's tempting to think, I want to keep that bit, I want to keep that bit, and eventually, you keep all the bits and it sounds the same. So for me, it's like I get to a point where I go, because me and Susie sometimes sing cover songs, and then I go, let's cut off, let's not listen to that at all. And it's so weird, isn't it? The when you then listen to the original afterwards, you go, oh wow, it's now a strange piece of music to me. That's the experience I often have anyway, which is
I would say that one thing that helps us is that we often do covers of songs that I actually don't like. so it's actually fun to make it to change it because I can make it in a way that I do like. So
I introduce a lot of music to Susie, who has a very different palette to me. Yeah. So, and I won't say what song, but recently I was introducing to her a song which is sung by Sting, but I know she's not a massive Sting fan. So I had to kind of trick her and just play the song by myself. She's going, what's that song you're playing? That's pretty good. Because if I'd gone to her and said, hey, do you want to do a cover of this Sting song? She'd be like, oh, I don't like Sting. I don't want to. So yeah, it's funny how you can be affected by it. I'm glad that Cordero is open-minded enough to play songs that he knows he doesn't like.
Yeah, usually I'm the one suggesting it. And he's like, I don't like that song. I'm like, come on, Cordero, trust me, it'll work.
It's good. That's a great part of being in a group with people, though, that you are going to push each other's boundaries and push each other outside of, we'll call them comfort zones, but they're really prejudices. But it's a good part of it. Guys, thank you so much for being here today. Our hour is
Thank you for
up.
having us.
I just wish we had gazillions of hours available to talk about this subject. We only kind of scratched the surface of it. But hopefully if you've been watching the show on the replay or you've been watching us live, you've got a little bit of inspiration there more than anything. And the next time you come to creating your own piece of music, I'm hoping you'll just be thinking about the arrangement a little more. And just lastly, we talk so much about engineering and mixing on this channel, but I truly believe that when you've got a good arrangement, mixing feels effortless. It feels like it just falls together, to be honest with you. So we don't talk about it often enough, but I urge you guys to think carefully about that and the roles that your different instruments are playing, the roles that they're playing, as I said at the beginning, rhythmically, harmonically, and melodically. How's the instrument serving the song at any particular point, and how are you using the arrangement to take the listener on a journey of some kind, an emotional journey, or if not a journey, to evoke some kind of sense of feeling. And I'm really glad that Cordero brought that up in the case of Mimo Japan's piece of music, which didn't specifically have a hook in it, but still affected us all and thought we'll go, hey, this is great, enjoying this. And it evoked mood and emotion in us all, which I think is why we're all here, and is a wonderful experience and wonderful that we can share it together and give each other ideas. Guys, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, for having us. We want to thank the community too for their kind words as well, and for also sharing their music and giving us a chance to do this. So thank you.
I'm sure you're used to hearing it, but it never gets old, huh? Cordero, any last words of wisdom?
Last words of wisdom. I not off the top of my head. Maybe I'll leave a comment when I watch this back tomorrow.
Right. Well, guys, I urge you to follow the link in the description to Sons of Serendip's YouTube. I think I've linked to your YouTube channel. Of course, their music's available in all the places where you normally listen to your music as well, Spotify and iTunes and all this good stuff as well. So, have a listen to it. They've got a page on Facebook. Follow them and have a listen to what they're bringing out. It's always interesting because of their arrangements. They're always just pushing you in different directions of what you're hearing. I think it's fascinating music. They deserve all the praise they get. Thank you so much for being here live. If you've been here in the live chat, you've all contributed wonderfully. And I will see you roughly this time next week.